last year, some new folks. Hey, Sean, good to see you. Some new folks on the call this week. Just as the last meeting, guys, other than muting your phone when you're not speaking, when we get to open discussion, or even if there's some really timely questions be asked, maybe during some of the presentations, which will be briefer this week, we really want everyone to participate. The reality is that, not having siloed discussions and really having everybody just kind of thrown right into the mix right now, we learn something from each other. We're really interested in hearing what the practitioners are seeing on the ground, as those of you who are trying to run your businesses, and finding ways in which we can help make you more successful as we look to come out of the recovery. Those of you like Matt and Abby at 5 Points in North Columbia, you guys are talking to so many of your different members again on the ground. Carl and Frank, we really want robust criticism, but even more importantly, ideas as to how we can move forward. So as we all know, the purpose here is just for us to try and identify some the unique needs of our various businesses and industries, and just to brainstorm solutions, to share some best practices for the safe reopening of our businesses, to try and develop some type of a comprehensive strategy that allows for us to have a safe and responsible reopening of business. I know there are a whole lot of folks who are looking to us for advice and counsel, maybe even some tools and resources. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. And obviously producing some type of data-driven decisions. I'm a firm believer we're seeing that. Some data I saw, and I'll share it broadly from our Harvard call yesterday, is that even as a number of states reopen, that a lot of citizens aren't showing up yet because citizen confidence isn't there yet. I think the more and more we do working together to put out really thoughtful, data-driven decisions that help instill citizen confidence, the better off we are. And again, just continuing to emphasize the fact that being pro-public health is pro-business. That the more we can do as a government, as a coalition of governments, and partner with the private sector and nonprofit sector, that everyone wins if we focus on good public health. It certainly is pro-business. So that's what we're doing here. Again, we're all in this together. So we want everyone to participate. If you got some thoughts, if you got some ideas, if you got some frustrations, when we get into open discussion, which will be very quickly, we're going to ask you to chime in. So with that behind us, Chief Tinsley, can you give us a sit rep on COVID-19?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, as of this morning, there are over 1,200,000 confirmed cases in the U.S. Sadly, there's over 75,000 total deaths. Here in South Carolina, there's 7,142 confirmed cases. All 46 counties are reporting. Sadly, we have 316 deaths. As of yesterday, there was 214 new cases. The additional updates we'll post this afternoon. Total tests statewide are over 70,000. As you saw, the 7,142 are the total positives. About 2,500 of those cases are here in the Midlands. DHEC has doubled their testing. As of last week, their positive test rate was around 10%. As of today, it's around 5%, even though they are testing more. The positive rate has gone down. For Richmond County, we are currently at 1,043, and that's 1,043 confirmed cases. And sadly, we have 52 deaths to date. 29 new cases as of yesterday. The highest zip code activities continue to be 29203, 29210, 29223, and 29229. And according to DHEC, the hospitalization rate is about 20% of those with the illness require hospitalization. The COVID-19 recovery rate statewide stands at about 78%. Hospital capacity here in the Midlands, the hospital bed utilization rate is 67%. And overall, statewide, the percent of positive cases over a 14-day period continues to trend downward, and hospital capacity remains good. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Harry, can you just for clarification, I know you kind of went over the recovery, but what we're really talking about, you know, everybody uses a cumulative number, but right now there's about 1,500 active cases across the state, correct? Because I know everybody's adding the numbers, but then you just subtract them too. So we're really talking about 1,500 active cases in the state currently, roughly, right?
Yes, sir. And about a little over 400 of those require hospitalization,
okay,
or they are patients under investigation.
So most of it, so the hospitals still are everything's still where we were, which means that we're in very good shape. And I noticed the hospitalizations went up in your last report, and I think that's elective surgery has come back too, which is a good sign.
Right.
So we're going to, as Chief Tinsley mentioned, the state has procured some additional resources from the federal government that had previously been sequestered, and they're going to significantly ramp up some testing. Still only 2% of the state, but that should be 250,000, so a couple 100,000 more tests. So we'll see more positives, but also as we test more, we'll see the percentage of cases go down. I do hope that the quote unquote recovered rate does indeed mean that people have recovered. I think we're all still in the midst of this thing, and hopefully the science will continue to be illuminating. So thank you, Chief.
I know we're trying to grow real quick. Harry, you might not have this information, so the next time you get a DHEC briefing, if you could find out, are they at all finding out, like the folks who are testing positive, are they symptomatic or asymptomatic? Because I think that's the biggest thing that we need to be looking at when we talk about reopening is how many folks who may not be sick, they're not going to the doctor, but they may have the disease. And if we can even figure out what percentage might be getting tested that are asymptomatic, that might be helpful for us to know the folks who are going around in the community.
Okay, I will reach out and get that information for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Tinsley.
Yes, sir.
All right, I think I've already kind of gone over the overview of the task force. Before we get an update on the city's efforts and the like, we discussed this past week the thought that we would break up all of us on this call into just small groups and ask you to take some time for a brief meeting, however long you guys choose to do so. We're going to have a primary contact at the city to help lead each of these groups, but to walk through the various issues that we wish this was a single shot issue, but the various issues that we're all going to be trying to tackle. Obviously, those that are unique to small business. Some of you obviously would fall perfectly into that space. The public policy considerations. You know, there are so many voluminous amounts of policy coming out of the federal government, and trying to make sure that we're leveraging that to the benefit of the city, but also to small businesses, and that we're also leveraging all this new law in a way to share with you some of the opportunities, but also the pitfalls. So making sure on the public policy committee we have a lawyer represented and maybe a CPA and others, so that we're able to give new and fresh information to small businesses. Just again, making sure we're kind of ahead of the curve, so we're not making some short-term decisions that might affect us long-term. Communications small group. Again, some of the great work that Kyle has been doing with some of his customers, working with our staff, Alicia and Scott and others, to try and maybe formalize some of the communications that we can make available to small businesses around social distancing and all the things that we need to make sure our employees, our employers, and our patrons are aware of. A committee focused on restoring travel, tourism, and business recruitment. Obviously, looking at the short-term and long-term effects of what this means for the travel industry, business travel, but also what our focus might for a while change. And Jason's on the call from Experience Columbia, but there's several of you who are in the hospitality industry who might want to focus there on maybe our efforts need to be focused on regional travel and how we're reaching out to folks who are getting stir crazy like all of us, but maybe we need to be focused on folks in North Carolina and Tennessee and Georgia if we're going to start getting our tourism back up to a meaningful amount. And then obviously the work around business recruitment that Ryan and Jeff Rubel talked about last week, but focusing on that area. Overall public health and public safety. There are so many of you on this call who are doing some great work out as a small business or even in your capacity as public health, healthcare leaders around testing and making sure that we're doing all the things we should be doing around social distancing in the public domain. Committee focused on sports and events. And obviously a lot of these decisions around some of the larger 50,000 foot decisions may not be made here locally, but I am convinced that we can do add a lot of value on how we start planning for the return of sports and large scale events down the road. And then a committee focused on technology transition. The reality is that as many of you are living right now, there are some technological trends that we all saw already happening around automation and AI and advanced machine learning that were changing our businesses that have been accelerated. And these are not temporary changes, but permanent changes. What are some of the tools that are already out there, or some that might need to be thought through that might help so many of our businesses transition to that next phase, transition to that next level? What ought we be doing to help a business that usually may have had a number of people gathering in the lobby for rendering of personal services, helping some of our businesses transition to scheduling software that helps them still remain vibrant and help them cash flow, but utilizing technology that they probably wouldn't have adapted to if in fact we've not had this crisis before us. These are the small groups that we've been working through. If there's something missing, or some other ideas, or some way we might need to make some of these broader, then when we get into the discussions session, we want to hear from you, and then immediately afterwards, we're going to ask you all to communicate with Taylor Wright on where you might land. Some of you, if you want to serve on more than one committee, that's great. Some of you have already taken the liberty of appointing you to certain committees because we need your voice there. I know Daniel had some thoughts on one idea around small businesses. Dan, you want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, I think one of the things that talking to a lot of folks, and I think is helpful, and is putting a toolkit together as we move forward, which would encompass providing our small businesses with, some signage, some thermometers, some masks and things to kind of help them. And we've kind of discussed this at council a couple times, and really would like to try to put that together and get those out as we move forward, to just give us simple tools to help those businesses get through, because it's just one more thing that they're going to have to procure, and it's something that we can help with that makes it easier to not only protect their employees, but protect the public in general. And council is worked as a group to try to put this together and talked about it, and would like to try to pull things together. I know Kyle's on the phone from Image 360, and he's got some great signage that we could put in these kits. There's also, fortunately, unfortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, there's an abundance of masks and thermometers and so forth that we can procure and put a real good package together to help all the small businesses transition into the new world. So we'd like to add that into the package.
So everyone, take a screenshot. Keep your eyes on this screen. We're going to pull it back up in our discussion section. Let's get a quick update from staff on some of the things the city has been doing. Maybe a quick update, and then I know Ryan Coleman has had a great survey, just kind of surveying the landscape with some of our small business leaders from across the city. Get a report from Ryan, and then we're going to go straight into the discussion period. Who's up first? Is it Missy and Melissa?
Mayor, do you want to talk about City Council's efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you, Taylor. I'm up first. So many of you saw yesterday. Obviously, we had a City Council meeting. We extended our emergency procedures, so we're staying in emergency mode. We did also pass a resolution. Just wanted to clearly state, underscore for the community the importance of continuing social distancing and being very thoughtful and responsible about how to move forward. And we did illustrate in the bottom of that resolution that if you don't have it, Taylor, let's make sure we send it out to everyone. The resolution that the CDC guidelines articulated earlier this week. It's a voluminous 17-page document, but worth digesting, along with just a bulleted about 7 different things that we think that every business should do. We made the commitment yesterday, and we're working through the blocking and tackling of making testing available to our small businesses, and we'll have some follow up on that. We also launched a Peace of Mind initiative along with some of you on the call, and we appreciate that. We've been able to raise some private funds to make hotel rooms available to those frontline first responders, medical, emergency, our traditional first responders, fire and police, and also our solid waste workers and others that might have an opportunity to be overexposed to COVID-19 or the coronavirus. Rather, we heard a number of stories of folks who just didn't want to go home, worried about infecting families, those who taking dinner in their cars, and thought it would be the smart thing to do to raise some funds to put them up in hotels. A number of our hotels stepped up, provided deeply discounted rates, and those rates, hotel costs are being taken care of completely by Peace of Mind. We continue to raise funds. The Police Foundation is our fiscal agent for that. So if you'll have folks who may fit into those broad categories of folks who may take advantage of this, we would encourage you to ask them to visit the Columbia Police Foundation's website and get the details on how to participate. The hotels, there are hotels across downtown, 5 in downtown Columbia, and also Lexington, the Wingate Inn across from Lexington Medical that are participating in the program. Melissa, you're on mute still, dear.
I'm on mute.
There you go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you. I'm happy to say that we have actually finally expended all of the $1.4 million that City Council has actually allocated to our small business stabilization forgivable loan program. We were able to actually support 323 small businesses as a result, and we'll prepare a final report for council as exactly how we've done it before. And I'm also happy to say that we have had 10 of our small businesses that have taken advantage of our commercial revolving loan fund payment deferment that we started at the beginning of this. We have about 32 actual active loan recipients at this time that are making payments. And to date, we've had about 10 that have taken advantage of the deferment, and we have others that are coming in. So I'm pretty sure we'll have additional ones that we can add to that list eventually. But everyone's very appreciative especially SBS, really has earned a great bridge as other federal resources have come in. And they're also happy about the deferment fees. Thank you, sir.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. You and Ryan and our finance department, the whole team, you guys just executed so well on this. So thank you so much. And Ryan, thank you. Missy?
So I'll talk about a few of the things we've done from the beginning. I'm going to skip the list for a minute and start with parking enforcement. Early on, we saw the need as restaurants were shifting to the takeout or curbside only. We started bagging meters adjacent to restaurants. So that is still in place. We've added some bags as requested. So if businesses think that they need some bags just to designate meters, we're trying not to make it business specific because we have a lot of areas with multiple restaurants in close proximity, but we will add bags if needed. So we're still doing that. As far as parking enforcement goes, we're still enforcing the fire lanes and the yellow curbs and all the safety needs. We are not doing, we're not enforcing street meters or the decks right now. However, we are counting spaces. So we've been counting from the beginning how many vacant spaces exist, and we certainly see an uptick in parkers on the street and even in our garages. We believe a lot of those are employees of businesses that have reopened. So we will just be having conversations over the next few days and weeks about what it looks like to make sure those spaces are open for patrons. So we are not shifting into a mode of trying to issue citations, but we certainly want to make sure that the convenience spaces are available for patrons to come in and be able to enjoy the outdoor dining or the businesses that have opened back up shopping. So just look for us to have conversations about that, and please send us some suggestions or information. We do have a social media platform on parking services. I would ask everybody to join that because we'll be pushing messages through that as well as the city's social media and hopefully the mayor's social media. As far as outdoor dining goes, we have a lot of restaurants that already had outdoor dining permits. Some of those want to expand those permits. So that's going to be a really easy process. That's a staff-driven permit approval. The application is a fillable application available online. So we would ask restaurants, they still need to fill it out. They need to give us the layout of what they're looking at. Traditionally, we have not let the outdoor dining expand beyond the footprint of the restaurant. However, we will do that during the temporary measure. We do need the adjacent business owner to support that. So we just need to make sure that they don't feel like that's a negative impact to them. But that's going to be a quick turnaround. We have that link on multiple department sites, and we'll try to get it on the front page of the city's website at some point. But it's on Planning and Development Services. It's the group that takes those outdoor permits, and they coordinate among all the departments that need to look at it. But we also have it on OBO and Economic Development website. And then they wanted me to talk a little bit about traditional operations, because I know we're closed to the public as far as our buildings go. We are still conducting business. We're operating. Many of our employees are remote from home. A lot of them are coming in and out of the offices as needed to make sure that workflow is still happening. So we're still issuing permits. We're still doing inspections. So we're keeping our activities going. So if y'all notice anything that seems a little bit slower, be patient with us, because we do have employees that are working remotely, and sometimes if they don't have computers at home, they may pop in the office a few days a week. So just bear with us, but we're certainly trying to keep activities flowing and business going, even though our buildings are not open to the public. We are also already posturing for what it looks like when we do open back up to the public. So we're looking at all of our public facing components, making sure that we have proper safety measures in place for our employees and for the public. So at the time we do decide to open, you will see the plexiglass on the desk. You'll see the credit card devices. It'll likely be that the customer has to swipe that themselves and we'll wipe it down. A lot of things like that, social distancing in place that we're looking at right now. So at the time we're ready to open our doors, all of that's already in place. And then briefly, I'll talk about some of the payments due, and Jeff Palin's on the phone, so he may chime in as well. But we did early on delay the business license renewals until May 15th, which is coming up. So May 15th is right around the corner, but that date had been extended. And then HTAX payments. We are not charging late fees for anything from March, April, May, and June. We do need those payments made, but we're not going to assess late fees for that. And Jeff, you can chime in just a second when I'm through if you want to add to that. And then online payment processing. Traditionally, the city had anyone paying online would incur that cost of the online credit card processing, but we also waived that early on into the process. So Mayor, I think that's it that I was going to talk about, unless you have any questions for me.
Hello? Hey, you there? Hello?
Mayor, I think you're muted.
Hello?
Thank you very much. Yeah, sorry about that. No, thank you, Missy. Ryan?
Yes, sir. So I want to give a huge thanks and shout out to all of our business associations. Everybody has really come together to work on this from the get-go. And certainly our communications with them started off pretty early on, since they, collectively they represent a couple hundred businesses, and it provided us an easier and more efficient way to have outreach with the business community. Pretty early on, we started, we rolled out a website and started promoting open business listings, trying to kind of just do what we could to inform the public, and direct them to the local businesses that were open, and just do, whatever we could to kind of help provide, additional traffic and revenues to them, however possible. That evolved, and through our partnership with GIS Planning that provides us our online technology, that we put available sites up in the city of Columbia. A local rep, Stevie Field Chavez, is here in Columbia. She saw what we were doing with just providing the listings. They looked at their online GIS technology, and we were kind of able to merge those two things to put together Zoom Business. We're certainly the first entity in South Carolina to provide the online mapping with the available business listings. The links to the website, the hours of operation, any changes in status. We may have been the first community in the U.S. to do that actually as well. But we were pretty early on in just kind of trying to keep people informed, and, again, doing whatever we could, to direct traffic to the businesses. And I think based on some of the analytics that we looked at on our website, there was a lot of public interest in that early on from folks, that still needed to figure out, where to get some local goods and services, and obviously options on where they were going to be able to eat on a daily basis. So that's gone pretty well, and it's been a great partnership, and thanks to Matt Kennel, Kelsey Hennigan, Abby Nace, Sabrina Odom, Dave Britt, and Jen Suber, with all those associations. They've just done a stand-up job, and we've enjoyed working with them to do what we could.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ryan. Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and shift into an open discussion period. A couple of things that this wanted to highlight, obviously, the different types of resources we might need to have access to recovery efforts, continued focus on small and minority business support. Curious to hear again from the business community some takeaways so far. Always want to keep our eyes on, we're going to focus obviously on helping break down what the federal government, the CARES Act, and other supports might look like, and probably need to pull together a plaintiff plea for the state government to do more in this space, but always continuing, just as Ryan, Missy, and Melissa just articulated, there's more ways in which the city can be helpful in this process. I think the package that Daniel mentioned earlier is a really good idea, but we need your ideas, and then also just get a sense as to some of the long-term impacts on your businesses. And I'm gonna shut up, and you guys all know how to raise your hands. I think we probably can manage this pretty well. I do have a Duval. I think Howard, did you want to say something, Howard? Before
yes,
we go?
I do.
Okay, please go ahead, brother.
Mayor, yesterday when we passed our resolution, we provided a link to the CDC recommendations for state and local governments on how to reopen businesses. And I have seen a couple of the chapters, which are very detailed and thorough, providing step-by-step instructions and flowcharts on materials that would be needed and in which order they would be needed. My question is, do we have that document in our possession? Because the current administration is not promoting it. And I think that it will be the perfect document for these committees that we're talking about having in their possession, so they can use the expertise of this organization that has worked with these type of situations all over the world.
Councilman.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Yes, sir. We actually have it on our website when it was first released. I've been listening to some news reports that they have pulled, the CDC, because of the administration, has pulled back some of that documentation, but we did save some of those items on our website in PDF format, so they are on our website, sir.
Good, thank you.
And I think as many efforts as we can have to put in bite-sized pieces and easily digestible by all of our small businesses, I think it would be helpful. Thank you so much, Mr. Duval and Melissa. Some comments. We'd love to hear kind of what's going on with your businesses and some observations. I think Steve Cook, were you going to participate in the discussion as well today?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, buddy.
Trying to think, am I on there, Mayor?
You're a hot man. You're a hot.
All right. It's hard to believe, Mayor, that it was 2 months ago that you and I were having conversations on canceling St. Patrick's Day Festival. Seems like it's been about 2 years.
They're dog years, brother. We're dog years right now.
That's right. Well, I appreciate you letting me speak. We have been open this week. We opened on Monday, and I continue to think it's important, to show trust in small business. Our customers are my friends and neighbors. Our employees are my coworkers. I feel like small business is uniquely situated to be able to, take this situation and do what's right. I will say, just speaking to the demand, that's one thing that whether it's media or folks I talk to, they're like, well, you can open, but the demand's not there. That is not true. The demand is there, and it is increasing every day. I know a lot of people probably saw the Jake situation that happened down here in 5 Points. Obviously unfortunate, but what I think people probably overlook is that what was happening inside that business was the right thing. That they were doing the right thing. With the spacing of tables and things like that. So it's incredibly difficult. I think as we go through this to realize those kind of situations as they happen and what we need to do to kind of take care of things that are not even within our four walls. A lot of times it's hard for a business to handle that kind of thing. So we've done 300 guests so far this week, which is probably what walk in and out of Lowe's in 30 minutes. And I feel like we are exponentially better at handling that than the experiences I've had at some of those big box stores. I think that the reservation systems that the city is talking about putting in people's hands that might not otherwise have them, it would be a fantastic thing to do. Without reservations, I don't know how I would be able to do what we're doing. We're able to just bring customers in one at a time when we have space for them. And otherwise, I don't know how you deal with a waiting area without reservations. So I think that's a great idea. I think that, again, with the restaurants in particular, we have a unique ability to deal with the sanitation issues that this situation provides. I mean, every single day we're open, we have to deal with sanitation issues. So we're taking a lot of those back of the house methods and pushing them into the front of the house. And it's something that we are learning more about every day. I'm happy to share, maybe when we break into tasks, smaller groups, some of the things that we've learned, little things you don't think about, like we had guests that come in all the time and want us to take their picture with their phone so they can post it on Instagram, which we love. Our servers were trying to limit person-to-person contact, so we're not touching their cell phones. I mean, things like that that came up the first night. We didn't foresee that happening, so we're learning more and more every day. I do think some of the ways the city can help, the toolkit that Daniel talked about, I think is a great idea. There's certain things that we can get, like PPE and sanitation, that is not a problem for us. I've had a problem finding the thermometer stuff that we wish we had more access to. Obviously, testing. I've seen some small businesses do testing. I'd love to see access to that somehow. And it would be great, I think, to have some universal signage from the city. I think besides actually helping small business be able to produce that signage, I think it'd be great for the citizens of Columbia to walk around and have some universal, kind of showing a united front as a city. Because right now you're just leaving it to every individual, and people walk in. I mean, I'm sure that you guys have had that experience. You walk into a business and it's like you're learning a new sign language. You're not exactly sure what the arrows mean. Everybody's going the wrong way. And I think that would be helpful to have some universal signage. But I'm happy, like I said, to help share any other experiences that we've had. And it's been a very positive experience for us so far, welcoming customers back in.
I think one thing that we had spoke about, just to dovetail real quick off something Steve mentioned, was when it comes to signage, we had discussed having something that's very prominent and visible. So maybe doing, some small banner signs that could be, for businesses that are open, for businesses that are practicing enhanced safety techniques, something a little less on the door, and maybe that could be put out in the right of way so that it would be more visible, more prominently seen. And, as we're trying to start to encourage traffic once it's safe, something that will really help pull some people off the road.
Well, I agree. And again, Steve, that was a great report. I'm not sure if I was muted at that point when I said it earlier. Great report. I think one of the very quick and thoughtful things we can do, some of the materials that Kyle shared this past week, I think we probably need to go ahead and move quickly. Steve was 100%. Some of you, I mean, everyone has seen, I think, the pictures outside Jake's have been almost like iconic Annie Leibovitz photos now. The reality is that inside they were doing everything by the book. So just trying to figure out how, obviously, as we work into this new normal, that even outside of the venues, how we make sure that the responsibility is there to maintain your customers. And obviously some of those things will be handled by scheduling systems. But I think some very visible and clear signage that the city could potentially help with is a great idea to help with there. I will say this, and just in the interest of full transparency, I don't want our police officers and fire marshals detailed to maintaining crowds outside of businesses of any kind on a regular basis. We need them out doing other work, but they're going to effectively enforce the governor's executive order. But I think as a community, we all want them out doing traditional law enforcement and safety and security work. But I do think that some of that standard signage will be very helpful to help maintain the public domain in a very thoughtful way. So
this would be a good place to have the USC police assistance.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Duval. All right. Other folks, and you guys, I don't see a whole lot of hands up. Please throw up your hands, or if you got something to contribute, please go ahead and share some thoughts. Matt. Please, Mr. Johnson. Sam?
Matt Kendall, Miss Mary.
Matt. Okay, go ahead, Matt.
Mayor, thank you. First of all, I want to thank again Ryan Coleman, Melissa Lindler, and the city as a whole for helping the business districts right from the beginning. I was telling somebody in a conference call yesterday, compared to the Great Recession of '08, I feel like businesses are able to manage remarkably well given this terrible situation. The parking, one of the first things the city did to eliminate the on-street parking fees in garages was tremendously helpful. That's something a lot of other cities did not do and did it slowly, and doing that early and fast was very helpful. The sidewalk dining, having the staff approval of that is huge, not going through a long process on that. And I think that the new process with using adjacent businesses, if they allow you to use in front of them, it also is very good. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And then lastly, tell you a little bit what we're doing with our Yellow Shirt ambassadors. We have been operating on a half team since March, but we are ramping up to a full shift next week, a day shift for our ambassadors, because we are seeing a lot more activity with outdoor dining, as Steve said. I mean, a lot of those businesses are doing that very well up and down Main Street. We've actually sanitized those areas. We're spraying sanitizer, pressure washing. We did in front of Boyd Plaza, in front of City Hall, Taps Park, these high traffic areas. So I just wanted to say we're all working together, and I think the response has been remarkable. So just wanted to thank you for that, and just continue. And one more shout out for the Columbia Police Department. We also have had virtually no crime downtown, no vandalism, those things. That is down remarkably downtown, and that's been very helpful too. And again, that is not happening in other cities. I'm getting reports around the country that folks are boarding up and those kind of things to protect their businesses, and I've seen no need for that here. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Matt, it's awesome to see so many of us, in Matt, you and I, embracing our aging. Gray hairs abound. Gray hairs abound.
Yes, sir.
No place for vanity in this world. Yeah, you too, Steve. Christian. Did Christian have his hand up? Okay.
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yeah, I can, brother. Yeah.
Cool.
I see you.
So major concern right now is fire department does not seem to understand what the governor said as far as how many people. They were out yesterday telling restaurants that they could only have 6 people per table, when the governor said that it was 8 people per table, and the SCRA's guidelines that they posted for everybody said 8 people. They seem to be having a hard time.
I'm not getting any volume.
You might need to mute.
They seem to be having a hard time discerning what's an indoor space and what's an outdoor space. I know Casey Street Grill was told that basically fenced in outdoor area was not considered outdoor enough, which would
you broke up for a second there, Christian. Which restaurant?
Backstreets.
Okay.
Casey said that they came up, told him that he could not use his outdoor seating that had a fence around it because that was considered too indoors, although it does not go indoors. So that would be like them telling Steve he couldn't use his balcony. And so they just need, I think they need a little guidance as to what that is, because they came back to him with a occupancy of 30 rather than 40 because they reduced his 5 tables from 8 down to 6. Those 10 customers make a huge difference to the bottom line of any restaurant that has made the decision to be open right now. So if they could be just reminded of what the governor said, and if they're going to approach restaurateurs and kind of get in their personal space, they probably should be wearing masks. just to show that they're trying also. As I kind of told you, I'm open to any ideas as far as expanding the outdoor restaurant seating. We personally probably will not. My restaurants probably will not reopen until we can feel that we're at about 75% capacity. The numbers just don't seem to work for us at anything below that. So if we can make up for some of our capacity indoors with outdoor seating, which would be easy for us, as we discussed earlier, being on Main Street like that. We've already discussed it with First Citizens. They're cool with it. And yeah, our biggest thing that we're asking for help for with the city is access to the resources that we'll need for, so if you guys have a line on testing, so when we do bring our employees back, we can get them tested in a timely manner. It would just be nice to be able to certify that all of our employees that are working have been tested. And the signage that you guys are talking about, that would be fantastic. Any sort of help with signage. I think that the guidelines that have been put out, both locally and city and state and level, as well as what we've been reading around the nation for restaurants, are fantastic. I think, like Steve said, a lot of the protocols that they've used in the kitchen before and bringing out to the front dining room, and even more so enhanced sanitation things, are probably, like he said, keeping people safer than they are at the grocery store and your local home improvement center. So, I think we're going to see very quickly that the efforts that restaurants are making at social distancing is going to be, other than like we've all mentioned the Jake's thing. I was one of the people who just kept hammering everybody, saying, look, you don't understand that they're doing the right thing on the inside, and it's hard to control young people like that out on the sidewalk. So they're getting a lot of flack that they don't really deserve. I think if we keep following all this stuff, I think you'll see, I'd like to see restaurants over the next few weeks get expanded to even more capacity. And yeah, I don't know, that's about it for now. Anything else that anybody needs from me or has questions about, please feel free to reach out and ask. That's about it. But thanks for everything, everybody.
Yeah, that's all very helpful. And I may ask also, Chief, you and Chief Jenkins, and the Chief is on the line. I may connect you guys directly. We'd love to get some more feedback on because obviously with the I know with the SC with the Restaurant Association has proposed, how that's been incorporated into the executive order, what the governor says from the podium, are not always all the same things, and making sure that we're all certainly singing from the same hymnal, and the interest of public health is very important. But thank you, thanks for obviously the Christian. I was saying Christian, a 2-sentence question. He sent me back Tolstoy.
Oh no, I'm not Ricky Mollahan.
It's good. It's good stuff. Always very helpful. Greg Hilton, you gotta get your mic off mute. And so I realize also when I say raise hands, I'm talking about the tech feature, but we probably could just raise hands, and that this works well too. Go ahead, Mr. Hilton.
Hello, friends. So just a couple of comments and a couple of questions. First of all, thanks everybody for putting this together. And this is a crazy time. I think as a city, we're doing pretty well as a citizen observer. So a couple of things. I'd be interested in Carl's perspective and maybe some of the district leaders on kind of what you're seeing in terms of some of the federal funding flows. We had about 35 SOCO members that applied for, it's probably more than that, but that we count, that applied for either PPE or EIDL, and we've got about a 50% success rate with that right now. We did a bunch of stuff to try to help individual members get prepped for those. And, I think y'all can all assume this is an accurate statement. For most of them, this has absolutely been a lifeline. So that's kind of like observation number one, I'd be interested in whether Melissa or Carl or any other of the small business groups have any insights on how successful our small businesses have been here. Seem to be having a general thawing out in the icy business landscape. Hearing a lot more chatter about folks starting to spend money and new clients coming on much slower, obviously, than it was before. But I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I mean, I guess it's better than going out of business. So that's pretty exciting. And then I just have a couple of questions. The first one is, I think there's a lot of maybe ambiguity out there in the public. Can someone help me clarify what is the city's official position on businesses reopening right now? You know, if someone says we're ready to reopen, what's the city's response?
There's only one city restriction on businesses right now. There's no stay-home ordinance in the city of Columbia. It is the curfew, and that's it. It's 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew. That's it, Greg. So
Okay.
yeah. So try not to engage it with every do-gooder or not so do-gooder on social media. But I know that that's a legitimate concern. A lot of folks are confused; they're not sure what's what. There's no stay home, stay safe order.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I know there's a public health consideration that is significant, existentially and otherwise. But I think it might behoove this collective group of movers and shakers if we could share, if we're comfortable collectively sharing that message. I think that would be very helpful. Again, not saying that means people will transact with those businesses, but I think there's a lot of ambiguity around that. So it might be a powerful message to send out if we're ready to do that. And then
that's been the case for several weeks now, actually. So I think clarity is always good. So we'll make sure it's the case.
I appreciate that. And then the other thing is, this has nothing to do with small business. So we're planning on reopening probably our two workspaces the week of the 18th. And, we've got a fairly long laundry list of things we need to get done before that happens. We've had probably 20 or so folks working out of SoCo spaces that are essential folks. We've been requesting the letters, and so we're sort of semi-staffed. So that's kind of where we are. But just one kind of question: do we have any sense for what the city's budget's going to look like in the coming post-pandemic crisis? I'm wondering how bad it's going to get, and I know that's a very broad-based question. This is this is going to be public record, so I want to be sensitive to that.
I think it's fair to say now. Obviously, our CFO is on the call, but I dare not unleash him. I saw when you asked that question, he smirked really good. I think obviously we're going to see a significant drop off this year, but across from the macro side, across the country, state and local governments are probably going to see a $1 trillion shortfall in their budgets over the next year. I think the local government portion of that is probably 350 billion or so. We're not unique here. I think we've seen anywhere in terms of potentially next year maybe $20+ million. But to say, like I guess quoting Rumsfeld, you got your known knowns and your known unknowns or unknown knowns. I mean, I think we're all living through this and kind of figuring things out as we go. This is not a commercial, but you all know we haven't raised taxes in a decade in Columbia. We cut our tax millage by 12 mils over the past 10 years and invest in the places where we consider priorities. Our public safety budget's up about 80% over that period, and we've had an unprecedented investment in infrastructure, almost $750 million, water, sewer, stormwater. Just the things that we believe you should be doing. That focus on efficiency has also led to 5 years GFOA Award of Excellence in Financial Reporting, gotten several bond upgrades and credit rating upgrades from Standard & Poor's and Moody's and Fitch. So all the things that you want to see done, that same focus on running an effective and efficient government, we're going to take into as we deal with these very, very lean times going forward as well. We're going to have to obviously look at our budgets and trim our budgets, but it's going to be focused on a very thoughtful programmatic approach. We ought not lose weight by cutting off an arm. Okay, we're going to be very thoughtful in how we do things. But I think it's fair to say that Jeff, he hasn't chimed in, so I feel maybe fairly okay with the presentation thus far. But we're going to have some really lean times, brother. I mean, and you know, we've had situations, everyone has it in the past, where one revenue stream or another revenue stream might be adversely affected. It's rare you have every single one of your revenue streams affected. So we're going to have still a significant conversation around our budget over the next several weeks. There are some proposals, I know, before from the Municipal Association, before the governor and others looking to extend the fiscal year and the like. I'm not sure how that all impacts us, but that was a very broad maybe representation of kind of where we are.
Thanks.
All right. Good deal. Any other hands up or hands up? Jason Outman.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for having Experience Columbia on this call. And thank you, Greg Hilton, for using one of our great Zoom backgrounds that we put together. You see, I've got Willie Bryce behind me. Hopefully that will be somewhat full come this fall. Mayor, where do I begin? You know, we were headed on a great year tourism-wise. Accommodations tax, you know, we were pacing 7% ahead through February, obviously when all of this kicked in. Currently, our hotels, we finished April at about a 31% hotel occupancy, which actually is not that bad considering nationally hotels are running about 15%. So we've actually performed pretty well in our region. And last week, our hotel occupancy actually finished at 34%. So we are seeing an uptick there. Our low point was 27% back in early April. So we are starting to see a slow uptick there. Nationally, you know, the word is that the confidence from the traveler, especially business travel and leisure, is starting to return. Each week, I'm reading national surveys that are being done where more and more companies are feeling more comfortable in returning to travel. Meetings and conventions, now that's gonna be a while, unfortunately, until, you know, we receive some strong guidelines. And Cheryl Swanson, the general manager of the convention center, is working on a national task force to really understand what convention centers need to do moving forward to remain safe. So she is diligently working on several protocols to try to make sure that our center will be safe moving forward. All of our events did cancel March through May. However, we are still in June, we still do have events on the books. Prepare for the Cornhole Championships. They're still planning on coming in June. So that should be a great event. And I think we could easily social distance those guys. So we are looking forward to that. From an organizational standpoint, you know, we are marketing a recovery message. You know, you had mentioned at the very beginning of the call, marketing regionally, you know, looking at that drive-in market, and that's exactly what we're doing. There's 30 million people that live within a comfortable day's drive of Columbia, especially when you look at the three major highways we have intersecting here. It's real easy for us to get that drive-in market, especially to visit attractions and restaurants, and hopefully, you know, to return to the hotel front. So the marketing department is really looking at a recovery campaign that's focusing on real close, real soon, hashtag Real Columbia SC. So we're trying to build that, you know, that guidance of we will be open soon, and that comfort level that, you know, they'll come back to us. Obviously, with all the outdoor activities that we have to do in Columbia, with the rivers, the outdoors, you know, the national park. Obviously, we have a lot of different things that we can promote that hopefully will make people feel safe, that they can visit and still practice social distancing. What we are looking at is, how do we better understand, what the hotels, are doing. Obviously, major brands such as Hilton and Marriott, Hyatt are starting to put into play, guidelines for cleaning hotels and how they will even occupy rooms. We've even heard such things that if a guest stays in a room, it might be 24 hours later until they re-rent, that room to somebody. So, we as an organization need to better understand, what the hotels are doing, what the attractions are doing from a safety standpoint. I think we're, especially with this call, with Steve and Christian, we are starting to get a better understanding of what the restaurants are doing so that we can share that messaging, to the visitor. We're remaining very active on social media, making sure that, we are continuing to promote all the local businesses that are open, just like with the Economic Development Office. So the more we can understand what they are doing, the better messaging that we can put out, to the visitors that we are trying to draw into the region. I feel that we are on a good route with really getting back to opening and getting more visitors here. Again, the hotels are continuing to climb. We're getting better understanding of what the airlines are going to require. It does look like, masks will be required on airlines. Uber and Lyft will start requiring masks. Hybrid meetings are going to become a big thing that we're talking about. If a convention is for 1,000 people, it might be there's 500 people inside the convention center, and then we're live streaming somewhere for the other 500 people. So, these are all things that we're truly trying to understand. But I can tell you, in the tourism industry, which 36% of all unemployment has come from the tourism industry. So I really feel for the hotel staffs, the convention center staffs, the restaurant staffs, those that have been laid off and furloughed from this, because our industry truly has been hit hard. But we're a resilient community. We feel that that we will be back soon. And so again, the messaging and understanding what everybody is doing within the city that we can share with the visitor will probably be the strongest thing that we can put out with our social media and our recovery channels.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jason. We'll call on Carl Blackson. A couple quick notes before you say something. I know Greg's question earlier was specifically asking about city regulations and restrictions. Obviously, the governor still has a number of rules in place as they relate to business operations in South Carolina, and almost all of them, including, of course, our fire marshal and police officers, are enforcing the governor's executive order. So to make that clear, those restrictions remain in place. And also want to just, I'm not speaking on behalf of council, but if in fact we see a significant trend in data, obviously council might get back involved if we see some type of explosion, Greg. That's always out there, but I don't see that coming, and prayerfully it won't come. But obviously, but there's nothing in place locally. I want to make that clear. After Carl, I think Jeff, if you want to give maybe a brief update after Carl Blackstone on some of the other city financial issues that Greg raised, I think it'd be helpful for everyone to get an actually informed position on the city's finances, unlike mine. So, Carl, thank you, brother.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad I'm in front of Jeff and not behind him. Good, Greg, good questions on the PPP and the CARES Act and how it relates. We've been somewhat fortunate. The CARES Act gave, it was intended to help those that needed help, but also the PPP was intended to keep people on a payroll. So this is the third week straight that South Carolina has seen a decrease in the number of new filings. I think we're down to about, there were 43,000 new filings this week of a total of 460 in the last 7 weeks, 460,000 in the last 7 weeks. So that number has declined. I think that's attributable to two things. One, businesses going, obviously opening back up at a slow rate, but also businesses that were slow to get the PPP, they're finally bringing their employees back which takes them off of the rolls. So it like anything, first and foremost, I mean, it's unbelievable the number of, and we're at 14.7% unemployment nationally this week. Those numbers came out this morning. To think that we had a federal program start and implemented 2 of them, quite frankly, in a short period of time is rather remarkable. You're going to have a mixed bag. There's a lot of frustration out there with the PPP. That's typically those that didn't get it. It has not been perfect, but it has kept people on the payrolls, which is really, really important. So you're going to see Congress is debating now CARES 2.0 phase. That's their 5th piece of legislation they're going to be looking at in the next couple of weeks. They've got to find some solutions to local governments. They've got to help hospitals. Anyway, we'll see what comes out of that. I think there was another question about folks opening back up, and I think consumer confidence is slowly will come back, but it's not 100% yet. I'm glad Steve's seeing it at Saludos, and I think there's pent up demand for food, and if people can feel comfortable and safe, they're going to do it. Other service providers, a lot of the big companies in town are looking at June 1st as opening their doors. A lot of the national companies are looking at June 1st, and with a limited number of employees, and each week they bring back a few more. So I think this is going to be a slow grind the next few weeks as we get back to some sense of normalcy. Again, I don't think we can get back to a normal situation until we find solutions for daycare and education. And that's a big, big problem for working parents. And a lot of folks are, working half days and splitting time with their spouse if they can. But I think it'll be a slow opening over the next several months.
It's a bunch of really great and salient points, Carl. Thank you. And a note that Ms. Devine actually sent me as well. One of the recommendations we made in yesterday's policy recommendations to small businesses was a really thoughtful, or maybe more thoughtful than some of us have had in the past, as relates to appropriate sick leave policies. Also, just family considerations. I mean, some families are dealing with amazingly challenging situations right now as it relates to childcare for their children. So I think continuing to urge all of us to really continue thinking outside the box to meet the needs of our folks who certainly want to continue working. Some of you may also have a significant representation of older individuals. I did a national call at AARP last night. I think they had about 50,000 people on the call, and to say that obviously the concerns around mortality, obviously that might be overrepresented in that group, are very real, but also the number of folks who are still actively engaged in the marketplace and working, and maybe having some unique approaches to meeting their needs as well. But thanks a lot, Carl. Jeff, you want to give a brief update just on the overall financial condition, and then I'm going to go to John Katz.
Thanks, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. I am wearing a hat because I'm trying to hide all the gray hairs that I have and have been growing. So every time y'all ask me this very question, I get 100 more gray hairs. So thank you. But going forward, over the next 2 weeks, we have 2 meetings with our city council. During that, we're going to have extensive discussions on the upcoming budget for everything from the general fund to our water and sewer, our stormwater system, parking, hospitality tax, accommodations tax. Almost all of these are going to be affected through the events we're experiencing. Our focus, working with the city manager and other staff, is taking a look at the services that we're providing. So we're working on how do we continue to provide all of our services, even if it's somewhat limited, or maybe it's a little slower as we work more from whether it's telecommuting or however we're doing it. However, to date, we feel we've been working, and I think Missy Gentry discussed this earlier, I think we've done a pretty good job of keeping things moving forward. So our goal in the upcoming budget is to focus on continuing to provide our services while recognizing there are going to be some struggles. We do have different reserves that will help us get through the next year, but we're also cognizant of this could be a much longer period than just 12 to 18 months. The revenues that are generated today or not being generated today are really going to affect our budgets in the upcoming year, not necessarily directly today. If depending on how things emerge or change over the next 12 months, that'll actually have an effect on next year's budget as well. So we're trying to look at all of that. I say all of that to say is state law does require us to have a budget passed by July 1. We've already had small discussion of this with council. We will have a budget that works on providing still all of our services to bring to council next week and the week after. However, as indicators actually start to show up, and what I mean by that is right now, collections on just about everything from sales tax to hospitality tax to just to personal income taxes to business license revenues, everything has been delayed. You'll see where everything's delayed to May, June, and July. So we haven't had a good true indicator other than surveys and talking to businesses. So as we pass these budgets, we anticipate as we move through the months of July through October, doing amendments to these budgets to reflect the true realities that will come out. We may put a budget out there and certain areas of our different industries may come back faster or slower, so we'll have to reflect how that's going to happen. So I anticipate after we pass a budget here over the next month and a half that we'll probably be adjusting it over the next 3 to 4 months during the year as we see actual revenues come in. But again, our true focus will be to continue to provide all services. And we have been in touch. Jason, you had some pretty good discussion earlier about the tourism and hospitality industry. So I know between Ryan, Missy Gentry, and others, I know I've personally been talking with Bill Ellen a lot so that we can get a good feel for how things are going to look as we move forward. And we're going to continue to reach out to understand how things are coming back. So that will have a potential long-term effect on our budgets. So we will continue to look at that probably over the next 6 months or more. But we will have a budget and begin the discussions next Tuesday.
Super. Thank you, Jeff. John Katz, and then Kyle.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question. I mean, our business is a bit different than most in the hospitality space because we essentially take in 90% of our revenue between April and August. As of Sunday, 25% of our season is gone. So I'm wondering if you've had any indication or communication with the governor's office to find out when it's possible to start assembling in larger groups, and by larger, 25, 50, 150. Obviously I'm not sure when we'll be playing baseball. And I imagine when we come back, it's going to be certainly a very different look than it's been over time. Our challenge right now is we can't generate any revenue until there's some loosening guidelines so that we can actually put in, if 50 people want to come out and have a picnic on the baseball field, which normally we wouldn't do in May, we'd love to be able to do that. But there hasn't been, I guess, a whole lot of guidance for a business like ours, which is unique in that, we're basically a 5-month seasonal business.
I will tell you, most of my conversations, we've dialogued with a number of the leaders of Accelerate SC. Most of my conversations have been with DHEC, however. If we look at everything from testing and contact tracing and some of the other efforts there. I'll see if I just actually missed a call from one of the leaders on Accelerate SC while we were speaking, while Jeff was presenting. So we'll do some follow-up, and John, I'll see if there's any timeline from the governor's perspective on what he's going to do. I assume that some of it at least will be data driven, and the state has indicated that they've seen a plateau in cases. I'm not sure if there's been a plateau or not. And certainly most of the guidance from public health officials has called for a deceleration in the number of new cases before things might significantly loosen up. But obviously he's seen enough that it's pushed him to this point. maybe there's more in the pipeline. I'll see what we can find out between now and when we gather again next week.
Thank you, Mayor.
And also, I guess just your business, just like USC and others, be interested in any feedback you're getting from minor league baseball and Major League Baseball as well on what they might be also sharing with you on next steps too. Okay.
Yeah, and that's kind of the big challenge, is that Major League Baseball doesn't know what it's doing yet, which means they have no idea what they're going to suggest that we do. But there are communities that have, like the state of Oregon, for example, who's host to a couple of minor league teams. They've said no sporting events until August, or until I think through the end of August. That dynamically changes the landscape. We've got 5 minor league baseball teams in South Carolina, but our league stretches across 7 states. So even if South Carolina continues on the downward trend and we can ramp up our numbers, that doesn't necessarily mean we can play baseball again. And that's kind of the challenge as we look to, salvage what we can in the next 4.5 months to be able to backfill that with different types of non-traditional revenue for a baseball stadium.
Sure. And so I think a really laser-like focus on that non-traditional revenue is someplace we would have to really put all of our minds to work on that. Thank you. Kyle?
Yeah. Okay, you can hear me. Yeah, obviously we've talked about signage a lot. And so I just wanted to quickly chime in and just, as a team here, we've focused on, and what I'm hearing from y'all is really 4 things that we're doing and producing when it comes to this. The first one is kind of reopening communication, making sure small businesses, can communicate when things are reopened. The second is social distancing signage. The third is health and hygiene signage that we're doing. And then the fourth is, kind of actual protective screens for countertops and stuff like that we can produce. But to a lot of people's point, I think most of what's been put out there is all customized for each individual business. And while there is stuff that, businesses need specifically, I would just say I would love to enlist y'all to help and maybe send, ideas my way of what can be some uniformed things that we can start offering to businesses, ways that we can, kind of across the board be communicating the same thing. One that's going to help bring the cost down as we can, start producing things, at larger quantities. And 2, it'll help with kind of just us as a community and a society learning, what we're supposed to be doing. If they're seeing the same things communicated over and over again. So I just love, I'll make my email available to y'all, but anything that you're seeing in your small businesses or as you're out and about of things that you've seen that are, that you think are essential for each business to have, would love for that input from y'all. Again, we've come up with some, I think some good stuff, but really need y'all to kind of help produce something more uniform.
That'd be very helpful. And Kyle, you've already been appointed to the communications, a small business group as well. And I think hammering out something. I mean, your stuff may have been designed for some specific businesses, but a lot of it is just, I think, it's smart, it's clean, it's slick, and could easily be adapted and maybe have the perimeter of the city, or however we decide to do it, Tourist Columbia, however we decide to do it. So it shows some great consistency throughout the city. I think would be very helpful, but it'd be great to hammer that out. So maybe we even have some ideas to put on display and maybe start moving on some procurement by next week. I think that'd be a wonderful use of some of the funds we have set aside. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other hands up? Jason, anyone else wanted to contribute? I know we let me see who else. Riley Madden. Riley, thank you. Take your mute off. Riley, really, thank you guys. Would you tell some folks what you're doing today and kind of the role you guys have been playing a significant role in really helping meet some of the critical PPE needs across the country? Local guys doing some amazing work. Please go ahead, brother.
Thank you. So this is actually Alex Skarotic. Riley Madden is the one that's logged in. Pleasure. Everybody appreciate it, Mayor Benjamin. So a little background on us. We've started a medical company and PPE business. My background generally is in capital markets, private equity, and finance. We've been importing goods from China for the last 2 years. So over the last 2 months, the markets have shifted obviously everywhere in every local community across the country. And so we've shifted as well to immediately importing PPE products over the last 2 months. And so in a very quick time, we set up an infrastructure to be able to import mass quantities of PPE products. And we're here locally based in South Carolina and Columbia. I live in Lexington. We're doing deals all over the world. And so I met some of Mayor Benjamin's officials at our warehouse today to donate some masks. And we've got some masks here today that we'd like to be able to donate to any groups that need them here locally in our community that are in need. We went out to dinner last night in Lexington at Aladia's, and it was a humble moment to eat with plastic forks and plastic plates, and the servers didn't have masks, and so it just got me thinking, hey, we really need to donate some masks to our local restaurants and kind of businesses that need them, so their employees feel protected and have what they need before all the procurement offices are set up. I know Governor McMaster and Mayor Benjamin are doing everything that they can, but at the end of the day, it takes everybody coming together to be able to deliver a safe environment for our community. So if there are any areas of need for our local businesses that need them, we'd like to be able to give them out as soon as possible today or over the weekend. So that's kind of just a little background on us. We're trying to be one of the leading providers of PPE products across the country. We're working on procuring large deals with the states of California. We're working, of course, with the state of South Carolina as well. And so I'll kind of just pause there and again, appreciate all of you guys, local businesses, for doing what you do to make sure you support our community, and we want to be able to help and give back as well. So that's pretty much the story there. Appreciate it, Mayor Benjamin.
Oh, that's fantastic, Alex. In this order, can we get Diane Sumter, then Jason Outman, and then Greg Hilton? And before Diane chimes in, Alex, you're going to be downtown. You're going to be in the city today, doing some things. Have you and Demetrius and
Demetrius is going to be calling me back. Yep, he's going to be calling me back here in the next probably 20, 30 minutes. He's going to have a list of some local businesses that are in need. I've got 10,000 masks in my truck. I've got to meet our pastor over at Mount Orb and give them 1,000. So we've got about another 9,000 that we'd like to be able to give away. So he's going to connect with me and see who may need them.
Really appreciate that. Is this on?
She's trying to connect, Mayor. She's going to call back in. For some reason, she's on the call, but she wasn't able to actually speak. So she's going to try to chime back in.
Okay, so Jason, you had something else to contribute, and then Greg Hilton.
Yeah, Mayor, just real quick, I wanted to share with you and John Katz. On one of my calls earlier this week, I found out that North Carolina, the guidelines that they've gone to starting today, they are now going to be allowing groups of 50 or less. They will hold that until May 22nd, 50 or less. And if they don't see a spike, then they're approving moving to 250 or less, that they'll hold until June 6th. And again, if they don't see a spike, and then they'll reevaluate every 6 weeks after that. So just wanted to share something I learned this week from North Carolina on their group size.
Super. Well, thank you very much. Greg?
All right. So we've got a smart group of people here. I mean, love what Alex's group is doing. There are a number of companies that I think have shifted their focus to PPE here in the region. We give a lot of lip service to buy local. Sometimes maybe our action falls short. I mean, boy, what an incredible thing it would be to come up with a list of local providers and local makers, right, producers here of these kinds of PPE equipment, and to see what we can do to try to source as much of that as possible locally. I mean, you've got Zverse that did a total pivot. We've got the folks at Wedge Media that went from fixing Macs to essentially assembling lines. They've hired 20 people. I have to think that there's a larger list than that. And I know as a small business owner that we have struggled to get access to things like sanitizer. Thank you, Abby Nace, for connecting us with the crew that is sourcing locally and providing that. I mean, this would be a tremendous opportunity to recycle some capital within our local market.
Really good. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Is Diane back on yet, Melissa?
I know she's trying to get on. I know some of her concerns, sir, was that we definitely need to make sure that we have more minority participation on the call, because those businesses also have unique needs, and also all of our beauty and barber shops, to talk specifically with those with that industry because of their needs and their needs for this equipment as well. So I will certainly work with everyone. She's on the call now, sir. She just was unmuted. She's there.
Hey, Ms. Sumter.
Hello, how are you? Thank you so much, Mayor, and certainly thank you for the opportunity. And was so happy to hear several things that I've heard already, but wanted to point out some things that we need to give some deeper consideration to. Part of the group that I've been working with has been the barbershops, the hair salons, small restaurants, other kinds of businesses, and they certainly need PPP equipment, need some direction, and listening to see when they're comfortable or there's a safety about them returning. In addition, when you look at the construction, which predominantly are the trades, the HVAC, the electrical, the plumbing, they're waiting to go back into people's homes, and they too need PPP equipment. So wanted us to keep in mind those type of small businesses who, in a large, but the group that I represent just happen to be 21 ethnic groups, which are minority businesses, so that we can sort of get them back into the economic stream.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yes, ma'am. And thank you for being on. All the work you always do. I don't see any more digital hands or actual physical stuff right now. All right.
Mr. Mayor, I know at one time Raj had his hand up, and I don't think he's on anymore.
Yeah, he had a call. He had to jump off on.
Yeah, I know Jason mentioned, needing to know the needs. I guess if you could just find out from him and others, it's kind of the hotels, and then maybe our next call we can talk about some of the unique challenges that they're going to be having on getting clientele back in as local travel starts, and then we can talk about what their needs are as well.
Okay, super. Yes, ma'am. Super. All right. So let's head to wrap up, Taylor. I want to just a reminder of the committees. Some of you will probably get a note that I've already asked for you to serve on some of the specific committees that obviously be obvious to some of you, but your preferred small group, email Taylor Wright today if you can, please, because we're going to pull folks together as early next week as possible, so we can get a report out to the full task force. He's taylor.wright@columbiasc.gov. Another full group meeting, same bat time, same bat place next week. You get a notification about that. Would you default back to the small groups listing, Taylor, as well, just so again everyone has an understanding of the different committees. We're talking about small businesses, public policy, communications, restoring travel, tourism, and business recruitment, public health and safety, sports and events, and technology transition. If there's anything missing or anything obviously that needs to be illuminated under each of these broader groups. Obviously, there's some unique challenges that restaurants face. They would fall into small businesses. There's some unique challenges that Ms. Sumter talked about, the close contact businesses, the hairdressers and beauty salons, and even some unique challenges that minority-owned businesses face will also fall into there. So let's dig deep. I promise you guys there's no pride in authorship. The reason everybody's on this call is because we really need your advice, your counsel, your leadership right now. Just like we on this call, some great ideas, but also some really constructive criticism. And I think just having an opportunity to just throw everything on up against the wall and be fully transparent about our public, our private, and our philanthropic needs. I think that's the way we make the next step and the next leap forward as a community. So again, it's a Friday afternoon. That's an hour and a half of your lives dedicated to making this community what we all hope and pray it can be. So with 11 years ago, Greg Hilton helped me coin the phrase, the most talented, educated, entrepreneurial city in America was our aspiration. I say he helped me, he actually coined it and gave it to me. We're gonna keep on moving forward together. Last slide, Taylor. I remain convinced that together we're gonna navigate what lies ahead with optimism, confidence, and a long-term view. We can do this, guys. We can do it together. We can serve as a leader for not just the people here in the community who rely on us, but for South Carolina and for this country. Thank y'all. God bless you. Hit Taylor up with your small business, small group recommendations or preferences, and we'll keep on moving forward. Have a great Friday to all of my friends on here. Remember, this Mother's Day. Don't let us see you taking the Zoom call from the driveway next week because you screwed that up. Let's make sure we celebrate the moms in our lives. God bless y'all.